So on your screen, you have a summarized product definition. And as I said, there are a number of components here listed that enable this system, these rooftop units, to save energy. And one of the first things that I hope came out in the advancement plan is that we're going to be spending a bulk of work during the next phase of this work to identify, of those components, what ones are the best suited for California climates. So I anticipate in the next round that this product definition is going to get a lot crisper and clearer on exactly what type of components we're trying to target for these RTUs. Any questions with that before I move on? Okay, next slide. So target market, small to mid-sized commercial properties, and we estimate that about 2/3 of commercial properties would be a candidate for RTUs. There's a number of possible leverage points that we have identified. CalNext being one. They're actually looking to do some field testing and some research in the next year, and we would be coordinating with them to explore and understand leverage points there. A number of organizations, DOE, ASHRAE, AHRI, are exploring testing procedures and rating systems that we obviously want to plug in and understand what those look like and how we can partner. Also, MT organizations, the other CEE, the Center for Energy and Environment out of Minnesota, not the Consortium for Energy Efficiency, and NEA, both are looking at RTUs and efficient RTUs. So we think there's some tremendous leverage opportunities there with both of those organizations to continue to try and move this market where we want it to go. And CEE, the Consortium for Energy Efficiency, is also working on, I have them, thank you, are also working on a specification. So we've identified a number of leverage points. The end game of this, which you'll see in the logic model in just a moment, is going after federal and state standards and codes. So obviously lots of work within the state of California to coordinate on with the codes and standards team as well. Any questions on this before I move to the next slide? Oh, I don't know if I can answer a technical question, but we'll try.
I guess I'm trying to understand is what is the intervention? Like, I just assumed that most commercial businesses had rooftop HVAC systems. And you would just be, yeah.
Okay. So I can't answer that. So what we would be trying to do is when they go about replacing those, or when they're for new construction, we want that box to continue to get more and more efficient. And also encourage manufacturers. We'll talk a little bit about this with the logic model too, so hopefully it'll become clearer. But inform and encourage manufacturers to also take on more product specifications, inform their product development roadmaps, and really understand sort of the full capabilities. How much EE can we get out of this? Does that make sense? I see no from those eyes.
What? It's not that it doesn't make sense. It just, is that an efficient use? I don't know. I'm trying to.
I would say, hold on.
Okay.
Get to the barrier.
And then maybe, okay. I'm going to trust you, Jeff.
She'll trust Jeff, but I'm still on the fence. I got you. Maybe in time, you let me know. Okay, any other clarifying questions on this before I move to the next slide? Okay, next one. So conceptual logic model, which I have some that I'm gonna pass out to y'all. This is everything that Elaine said earlier about this being a conceptual logic model continues to hold true. This is going to obviously continue to be refined and enhanced as we learn more with our market research and understand a bit more about the opportunities. And thank you, Stacy. I'm now going to talk a little bit about the specific barriers that we've identified here. So, obviously, there are a number, as I said, barriers are going to continue to expand. This whole thing we're going to continue to refine and enhance as we learn more about this product and this market over the course of the next year. But some barriers that jumped out to us out of the gate, you see here on the slide and also in your hands if you're in the room. We recognize that there is a complex codes and standards process, both with the states and federal. We just want to keep our eye on that prize, understanding that there's pieces of the RTU that might be preempted from federal or preempted from the state, and we just need to make sure that we understand that process and are designing our interventions appropriately. Manufacturers' lack of interest potentially in product development. HVAC manufacturers are often asked to add a whole bunch of stuff to new product, and we want them to prioritize what we're asking. And so this is obviously something that we would do a lot of work to gain the interest of manufacturers to help and partner with us on product development. And I think that one of the things that is really enticing about this, initiative right now is the fact that we have an opportunity to leverage other partners in the market that are doing this as well. As I mentioned, NIA is in this game, CEE is in this game. So we would have the opportunity to go to manufacturers with a holistic ask. There might be differing product priorities across climate zones. California is a more mild climate than, say, Minnesota. And so what the product is needed in Minnesota is not necessarily the same thing that the product needs in California. And there's also a variety of climate zones in California. So we need to understand that a little bit more. There currently is not a great mechanism to differentiate the most efficient product. So we would need to be able to do some work on that. We anticipate that end user costs for these more efficient RTUs is probably going to be higher. And that doesn't just end at the end user, but that kind of flows all the way up through the supply chain, right? As manufacturers are adding components or features to their products, their cost increases as well. So need to be mindful of that. Product availability, how quickly can you get it? If it goes out, is it as available as the less efficient product? And also workforce capacity. When we think about, if you Google HVAC and workforce right now, there's thousands of articles that will pop up about how there just aren't enough bodies to do these jobs. And as we start working in markets where we're pushing more and more people to heat pumps, we just need more and more people to be able to pick up the phone and do these jobs. So workforce capacity is definitely something we're looking at. And there's actually a pilot in the advancement plan that we're going to build out targeting just that. Questions with the barriers?
This is Cyan. I just wondered if there's an increased cost, that there's some kind of like the landlord versus tenant issue that I'm not sure if it's identified in this or not. So the landlord would be the one purchasing the equipment, but the tenant might be the one that's paying the.
Yeah, we might have a split incentive issue. And I think after our market characterization, we're going to have a lot better understanding of where that is to be able to design appropriate interventions to come at that cost hurdle. And I see that Fred has raised his hand. Fred?
Yeah, just on the barriers list, the changes
Hold on
to.
one second.
Okay. Am I echoing?
No, there you go. Can you say that again? Oh.
Among the barriers, there's a lot going on right now in the sector that forces manufacturers to go to their limited capacity for equipment testing, including changes in refrigerants and other
Hang on,
code
Fred,
changes.
you're coming out of the computer, but not out of the room speakers.
Ah.
So
It's
hold that thought.
clearly my fault. Did that do it? Testing. 1, 2, 4.
Fred, could you type your question into the, no? Could you
Yes.
type your question into the chat while we try and work out this echo situation? I'm sorry. Now, Fred, can you test? Could you say something? We're testing the audio too.
Testing words. Can you hear me?
We cannot hear you if you're talking. So we're going to work on that on our end. But if you also could just put your comment into the chat in the meantime. Okay. Next slide.
Yeah, sorry. I was trying to think of how to form my question on barriers, and that is, I think the problem is value proposition. After working with, dozens or hundreds of clients as a MEP engineer, it was hard to get any of them to budge above minimum efficiency, no matter what the availability is, what the payback. And again, their payback criteria, maybe that's part of the value proposition is, how do you get past that 2 to 3 year payback criteria that most of this audience will want? And I mean, it's such an antiquated notion to think in that way, but especially if there's a split incentive issue where they're not paying the energy costs, or if they don't expect the business or their own business to be around for more than 5 years, you know, they're looking for that shorter payback, if you will, simple payback. So how I think, I mean, you know, that to me as a on the ground, you know, specifier of this equipment, that would be the biggest barrier.
Definitely. Split incentive and cost is going to be something we definitely have to work to overcome. Jeff.
Jeff Harris. So full disclosure, we're working in this market, and we're collaborating with Minnesota Center for Energy Environment, and Nicor Gas and the North American Gas Heat Pump Collaborative. So and then there's the Boston CEE. There's a lot of folks circling this. And so now that I've disclosed all of that, our involvement in this particular market, Luana would say, so the barriers, there's myriad barriers. This is a commodity product that nobody looks at unless it's failing. And it's mostly going into property where there is an owner of the building who leases it out. So yes, there's a split incentive problem. And so there's a myriad of barriers right out of the gate there. But the opportunity comes from the fact that policies are changing everywhere to address greenhouse gas emissions. And from these particular products, for like big box retailers have these on their roofs. And if they're committed to ESG and greenhouse gas reduction, this is one easy way for them when they're upgrading or replacing equipment to meet those goals. So there's some external drivers that we haven't had before for this particular piece of equipment. On the way to that, even though this is a commodity box, there's no box rating. There's no federal standard for the box. There's standards for the heating section, and there's a standard for the air conditioning piece, but there's no overall, like, this box has a rating that says it's efficient. And so you have to involve an MEP guy, and he's the guy who's supposed to sell the value proposition to the corporate exec at Walmart who's making a purchase decision for 1,000 units next year. We need to be able to get the value proposition on, if you buy these things, your greenhouse gas reduction will look like X, and sell it to the big corporate buyer in Bentonville, Arkansas. To get to that, we have to have a test procedure that we all agree on, which is getting close. We're not quite there yet, but PG&E's Codes and Standards team is working with our Codes and Standards team, which is working with others to get to the Canadian Standards Association, et cetera. There's a bunch of us working on getting the test procedure nailed down for the whole box. And then there are different levels of efficiency that you can get. Once you've got that, then you can have a tier 1 efficiency level, which is just like a small 5 to 10% increment. And then there's a heat pump level that's 20 to 30%. You can do heat recovery ventilation. There's other options. Anyway, we can do a tier structure. None of that exists today. So you're exactly right. Utility programs can incentivize this today, but you'd be asking for a custom built unit that has a value proposition that's not going to meet that 2 to 3 year payback. And that's a one at a time sale. We're trying to get to where this is a commodity purchase with, people can order, I want tier 3 units, and just it's no special engineering decision. It's just an option on the order sheet. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. It's either,
Okay.
Okay, so I just want to read, Fred, we have the comment in the chat. The manufacturers have a number of regulatory requirements and product changes that are creating a demand on equipment testing and certification facilities. They typically resist any new requirements that requiring testing, citing the overload. I don't know when this problem is worst, and I also don't know if it's just a blanket stall. Can you? NIA's Chris Diamond has been facilitating discussions around the country to prioritize improvements to HVAC systems, focusing on electric, but some of the improvements may cover gas. Among the criteria, if there is significant embedded cost, it won't happen. He's identified a number of things that are not inherently very costly. This does not assure that there won't be a high markup, but the cost of the manufacturer is small. Thank you, Fred. Okay. So some opportunities, and Jeff talked about many of these, so thank you very much. I feel like I could pass through the next like 4 slides and we would have done this. So I think there's a number of things, as Jeff talked about, just the work that's happening here, the CEE specification, the whole idea of like trying to find a specification around the whole box, the leverage that other organizations are working on this right now. We wouldn't be doing this by ourselves, but there's already some momentum that we can jump onto. The other thing specific that we were talking about as a team is this EPA refrigerant phase out. As more and more products up on the roof, it's going to become more expensive for them to service them because the refrigerant is going to become so costly as refrigerant is phased out. So there could be an intervention there to help move products on those roofs that are more in line with what we're after. Because of time, I'm going to go to the next slide and I will pause for questions in just a moment. Okay. Somebody. Or not. And in the essence of also kind of this idea of, I think throughout the teams, the whole time we were looking at trying to leverage existing research and recognizing that we don't have to do everything by ourselves. So that's why in the opportunity slide, you also see the CEUS test, or excuse me, report that's coming out. That's another place of leverage where we think we might be able to dovetail on some of our market characterization and research work. So strategic interventions, we have some. So obviously, as I mentioned at the beginning, some of the early work that we're going to be doing as a team in the next year is understanding the best product for California. We want to provide a clear ask to manufacturers, and we think there's a huge leverage opportunity, as I've mentioned before, with the other organizations that are already in this space, to help rally that consistent voice to the manufacturing community. We need a trained and willing supply chain and workforce. We need the equipment and the right tools at the right price point. We need it to be available when people need it. And we also need to build demand as we continue to explore this product category. Next slide. Yep. Okay. All right. So for those of you on the phone, I just want to give you an update. We're going to have me finish the next slide, and then we're going to take a brief pause so people in the room can grab some lunch. Outcomes. So when all of this is done, and obviously we're going to continue to probably add a slew of outcomes as we learn more about all the research that we have in the next coming years, that we want there to be a mechanism that is going to help people making purchase decisions understand the difference between the RTU equipment that they have the option to purchase. There's a way to differentiate and identify that most efficient product. We want it to be available, not less available than the competing technologies, but something that they can get their hands on when they need it, that they are designed to support the specific needs of the California climate, that installers find ERTUs profitable and they advocate for the technology and help people understand the benefits of it. Manufacturers are engaged and willing to partner with us. Consumer expectations are met, and cost is no longer a barrier to adoption. So those are a few of the outcomes that we have identified. We can get that done in 2 weeks, right? Okay. Oh, wait. Yes, next slide. Okay. All right. And so when all of that is done, we want to lock in this change by impacting the federal and California codes and standards to lock in these efficiency and GHG gains that we have created with ERTUs. All right. So after that quick lunch break, I'm going to talk a little bit about external program review. So we've talked about a number of these things just in the conversation already today, but emerging technology research, definitely see an opportunity to leverage what's already going on and combine and explore research objectives. CalNext being the one that jumps out. We've already started conversations with them. There is an opportunity, investor-owned utility programs, kind of the conversation that you and Jeff were having earlier. Like if that's someplace that ultimately these are going to land, coordinating and leveraging those efforts is going to be something that we want to make sure that we keep our finger on the pulse of. California Energy Codes and Standards, as I mentioned, and then all of those organizations working on the specification, the manufacturer outreach, and the kind of a similar approach to market transformation that you see here down at the last bullet on the screen. Next up, Stacy. Okay, so research needs. So what we're going to be focusing on, or what we prioritize focusing on over the next phase, is obviously the technical assessment of those product components. Like I talked about, we're going to be spending the first part of the year understanding what of those components make the most sense for California, and we want to assess those to understand that. Characterize the market, developing that market baseline, which you've seen in all of the MTIs, or excuse me, the advancement plans presented today. Understand the current RTU stock and current experience, and that experience both from an installation perspective, but also from a purchase perspective, and sort of understand that pathway to purchase. So characterizing that purchase decision-making process, cost analysis and assessment to understand sort of the conversations that we've been having about first cost and split cost and incentives and all of that good stuff. And also at the bottom, which seems to be hidden on this, is this workforce development pilot that we had a little bit of information in the advancement plan, but obviously, as we've talked about today, more robust details will be coming out and posted for people to comment on later this month. Next slide. Okay, proposed phase 2 budget. I'm going to just pause here. Questions with that? Or anyone have any other leverage? Yes, and the market pilot cost for this is also higher than the other pilots, largely because there's some robust sort of incentive ideas that we have in there to help encourage people to play with us during that pilot period. And it's multi-year, yes. So that was the other thing you may have noticed in this advancement plan. It is this initiative, or excuse me, this advancement plan would be kind of working over the next probably 18 months to 2 years, because right now we do have some field tests studied in there, or excuse me, included in there, which we anticipate wanting to be able to experience both during a heating and a cooling season. And obviously we're going to continue to explore for leverage resources. So, or excuse me, leverage research opportunities. So the timeline of that might shrink up, but if we have to do it on our own, we want to make sure that we understand how these equipment operates both when it's cold outside and also warm. Questions?
I want to do a quick audio test. Can you guys, this is Jim, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. We just wanted to make sure that that was working. So it looks like Fred has a question. So Fred, we'll see if we can hear you.
All right, Fred, what do you got? If you're talking, you're muted. We can't hear you.
That was my bad.
Okay.
Just thinking,
Thank you.
yeah, what a relief, huh? No, I was just thinking that after you look at what features produce energy savings in California and are appealing, I think an important moment will be trying to assess the degree to which those are also features that work around the rest of the country. Manufacturers need to regionally differentiate products, and the only regional differentiation I've seen that they've tolerated, other than some specialized equipment in Canada that's mostly small manufacturers, is about humidity and latent in the East Coast. So to the extent that you can find a common set of features that will lead to a decent number, that's better than perfecting it in California.
Absolutely. Any other comments or questions? Okay. Jeff Harris.
This is a question, and then there's a suggestion that follows. The question is, have you talked with the CalNext folks about their role in testing? And because we've got labs here with the IOUs that could do some of the testing work, and whether they have budget to do that, so that, I guess the question is, does all of the budget for that need to fall on CalMTA, or could it be shared with CalNext?
There is a small sub bullet underneath sort of, I think, in when we talk about sort of the testing component, that we are going to be looking for leveraged opportunities before we go and start going down this path solo. And I know I have participated in some conversations with CalNext about ERTUs specifically and some field testing plans that they have. But Jeff Mitchell or Elaine, I know you guys have had more conversations. I don't know if you've talked at all about laboratory opportunities or anything else that you want to add to help add additional color to that.
Most of the work that CalNext is looking at that would touch this product would be around economizers and figuring out ways for economizers to work better, but also workforce supply. So there's opportunity there. And I'm guessing there's other opportunities if we set it up with that.
Does that answer your question? Okay. All right. So phase 2 next steps. So we've already talked about this, developing the pilot in more detail that is you see in high level in your advancement plan, coordinating with external programs, as we've just talked about, a perfect example of being CalNext, implement those research scopes that are in the advancement plan, outreach to all of these possible partners for potential leverage points to help further refine our logic model and long-term strategy and thinking. And then also initial outreach to key manufacturers and other supply chain actors. And one of the things, just to echo the point that Fred made, I think we're thinking of this too as also being a key leverage and coordination opportunity with some of the other parties that are playing in this space already. Because to Fred's points, which I completely agree with, manufacturers love it when we can coordinate together and just seeing if we can create opportunities where we can show up with a consistent voice.